Welcome back to part 4 of Lazy Afternoon. Now we're going to continue to work on the leaves of the vine. I'm going to zoom in for a tighter look. We're going to use 4 or 5 colors. We're going to use Carbothello 585 olive green. That's what I'm doing now, outlining the leaf. We're also going to use Carbothello 575 leaf green, 595 leaf green deep, 570 leaf green middle, and that's what I'm using now is the leaf green middle, and then 560 leaf green pale for the light. I'm using 595 to draw the stem down the leaf, and I'm adding some color with that. I've already completed the leaves above it using the same colors. Just be sure and follow the light and dark pattern from your reference, or you can follow the light and dark pattern in what I have painted. Now I've switched over to the 585 olive green and continue adding color into this leaf. I'm going back and forth between the colors. This is 575 leaf green. And down at the very tip, I'm going to use some 450 Carbothello cyan blue. I've noticed that there were blue highlights on the leaves. I thought that was quite nice, and that would add some nice variety to our leaf. And now I'm going to blend that with my little blender. Decided to add another layer to this leaf, so at the top I'm adding a layer of 585 olive green over the previously applied leaf green deep, kind of filling in the tooth a little bit, making a smoother application. And now I'm going to draw in some veins with 570 middle green and add some color, a lighter value with that middle green underneath the vein. And I'm going to draw another section and also add light color. Now I'm using the 595 dark green to add the darker color under the veining. I'm going to add a third row further down. Now this is the 560 leaf green pale, which is our lightest color. I'm adding some highlights and some different veining that I saw in the reference photo. And to make that stand out and give it more dimension, I'm going on one side of that with my darkest color, which is 595 deep green. I'm coloring the other side of the leaf with 585 olive green. And now I'm adding some 570 leaf green middle to where the vein was. And I'm darkening this area on the left side with 595 dark green. This is also 595 dark green. The leaf over to the top of this one is casting a shadow, so the dark green is the shadow. Now I'm using 570 leaf green middle to fill in the bottom of that leaf. And I'm going to blend that with my blender. I'm going to add my highlights and some veining with 560 leaf green pale. And then on one side of the vein, I'm using 595, which gives dimension to the vein. Make sure you put it on the same side for all the veins in the area you're working on. Now I'm lightening my leaf a bit with 560, and I'm darkening the shadow area with 595. Now let's outline the top leaf with 570 leaf green middle, and I'm drawing in the veins. Now on one side of the vein, I'm using 595 dark green. Actually, it's above the vein. I'm placing that dark green above the vein. And I'm using 575 leaf green to fill in the rest of that area for each section and blend it with my little blender. And using 560 leaf green pale, I'm placing a light outline above that and a little lighter color, which gives that area dimension. I'm adding a little darkness, a little more with 595 leaf green deep. Placing a highlight with 560 and filling in that section with 575 leaf green. And I'm coloring over that with 570 leaf green middle, which is a lighter color, adding a little 595 leaf green deep. Just kind of finger blending that. I'm going to add a dark color to the bottom section of the leaf with 595. Now on that outer edge, I'm going to leave that. We don't want to blend it into the bottom leaf, so I blended the dark color, but on the outer edge, I'm going to use 570 leaf green middle. And blend that over to the tip. Draw in the veining. It's gotten a little lost with all the color. And use 595, the leaf green deep, to add some darker color. And see how it pops out those veins. And 560 for the highlight. So we're using value, the degree of darkness or lightness, to establish form. And kind of finger blending that. Adding a little more dark, a little more definition. So keep working till you like it. I'm outlining the stem with Derwent 210 Dark Fuchsia. And I'm going to highlight that with Derwent 190 Coral. Now I'm outlining the immature berries in this section of berries with the middle value green, Carbothello 585 olive green, and I'm filling those in. These haven't developed enough to turn color. They're still green. And then I'm going to highlight them with our middle value of green, 570 leaf green middle. And I'm putting some darker color with 595 leaf green deep. So I'm outlining them and putting a little dark spot in the middle. So this is 585 olive green. Getting all these little berries. Outlining them with 595. Now there's not much room, there's not enough room to use a Rembrandt. So I'm using my Derwent P370 to get in between the little berries. This color is very similar to the Rembrandt color that we were using, the 5058 Ultra Blue. So I'm using this one to get in between the berries. And that works very well. Use your Carbothello 390 Prussian Blue to darken and add wood grain in between the berries. Be sure and go in the direction that the wood grain that you previously added is going. So color carefully between the berries, and then you can blend it with your little sponge. Using the same pencil, the 390 Prussian Blue, add more color and deepen the wood grain. highlight the little green berries with 560 leaf green pale. I'm brightening up the stem a bit with Carbothello 335 magenta. I've decided to add a few more leaves up in this upper area. I want them to be light, so I'm using Carbothello 575 leaf green because they're kind of in the distance, so we want them to be faint and not draw too much attention. So I really am just randomly adding them into the painting. Now I'm adding color down at the bottom of our log, and I'm using 508.8 Rembrandt Ultra Blue Light. I'm working around as much as possible around this last little area of berries. Now I'm using my pastel pencil, the Derwent P370, to color around the individual berries and blend in the Rembrandt pastel that we applied just a minute ago. Now I know we used just the pencil in the smaller area, but I needed to use the Rembrandt to fill in this larger area of color. But the pastel pencil will help blend this into the Rembrandt. And now I'm blending the two areas together and blending carefully around the little berries with my blender. I'm applying lighter color with 570.9 Phthalo Blue Rembrandt down in this area underneath the berries and over it into the previous blue that we've put down. Now I'm applying it a little differently, kind of streaky, to represent the wood grain. I'm adding some white Rembrandt 100.5 and then blending that with my sponge and pulling my sponge also in the direction of the wood grain, which in this case is from left to right at an angle going downward. Here I'm using the Carbothello P190 Prussian Blue to add in shadows under the vine and the berries and wood grain. And then I'm going to blend that as well. I'm continuing to add wood grain to the log, making it a little darker, using the white Carbothello pencil to add white streaks. And then finger blending it. That helps develop the wood grain by adding the white with the blue and being very random about it. The important part is the direction. Now I'm using some black to darken the blue and to add darker streaks. This is Carbothello 750. Now here I've switched back to the Carbothello 390 Prussian Blue. Drawing that in. And blending it with my large blender. I want to get that darker underneath that leaf, that last tiny leaf. And underneath the berries. So I'm working around those berries with the 390, and I'm also adding the 750 black for darker streaks and blending it with the blender. Now we're going to finish up the vine. I've got the background underneath it. So this is the magenta 335. I'm outlining the vine and putting in the dark area and the little tiny buds and leaves that are coming off of it. Now I'm putting in the vine that goes to the berries. I'm highlighting the vine with the Derwent P190 Coral. I'm outlining the berries with 385 Violet Deep. I'm going to fill in these berries with the 335 magenta, coloring them in. Then we're going to highlight them. Well, I'm going to add some more violet, darken the edges and fill that in a little better. And then we're going to highlight them this time with the Derwent 190 Coral. And then a dot of white on top of that. Using the Carbothello 100 white or the Rembrandt 100.5. Or you could use your white charcoal pencil too. I'm adding a bit more magenta to the vine, and I'm also drawing some little stems off of it with the 335 magenta. I'm going to finish this little leaf. I'm going to outline it with Carbothello 585 olive green, and going over that with the 570 leaf green middle and filling that in. And outline that with 595. Draw a stem down the center, a vein down the center, excuse me. And highlight it on one side with 560 leaf green pale. And now we're going to add the base coats for our log. First, I'm adding 505.8 Rembrandt Ultra Blue Light and working carefully around the leaves that we put in a few minutes ago. Next to the 5058, I'm putting in some 227.7 yellow ochre. And now I'm putting down some more 505.8. Now I'm laying these colors next to each other, not on top of each other at this point. And again, some 227.7 and some white 100.5 over the yellow ochre to just kind of lighten it so it's a paler yellow. So everything looks kind of streaky, which is exactly what we want because this is supposed to be wood. You can use these techniques anytime you're painting wood. Just use different colors. So I've gone back to my 505.8. I'm working down at the bottom. You can see I'm kind of randomly applying the color, but keeping the direction of the wood grain in mind. And I'm not putting a heavy layer in. Now I have sketched in some wood grain and some knots in the wood over on the left side, which we'll put in more detail in the next part. I'm blending in the color with my small blender around the paw and the nails and the face of the wolf because I don't want to smudge what I've already done. I'm also going to be careful going around these leaves. After I've blended around the face and the paw, I'm using my larger sponge to blend larger areas and blend them together and make it more even, pushing it into the paper. I'm adding more white, 100 point white Rembrandt, adding some streaks of white and putting in a little blue here. I didn't like the yellow next to the leaf, so I'm putting in some blue to cover that up. And I'll use my small blender to go around that and blend it in. I'm adding some lighter color next to the wolf's face with the 570.9, and I'm using my Derwent P370 light blue to even that out around the face of the wolf so that it blends nicely. We don't want a gap between the background and the wolf. And I'm using my black pencil, 750 black, on the left side to blend the fur of the wolf into the log area. Just like we use the light blue on the other side, on this side I'm using black. I'm using my Payne's Gray 770 Carbothello right up next to the wolf. And I'm going to start to draw in some wood grain. This would be a shadow area where the wolf is laying down, so it's going to cast a shadow in this area on the log. And I'm going to use the 770 to draw that in, and then I'm going to blend it with the blender. Now I've switched to the Cretacolor black lead to make that area of the side of the wolf's face darker. I'm adjusting the values. It's very important when you're painting. So if you see that a value needs to be adjusted, darker or lighter, take the time to do that. And I'm going to use my blender carefully along that line. It's also helping to create that shadow. I'm using the Carbothello 770 pencil to create a shadow under the paw and also add some wood grain. So I've drawn it in and I'm going to blend it with my blender. And darken it up. Go back on the left, darken the wood grain there, and go back and forth to get it to the right value and to get the grain in the right direction. Now I've turned my paper on its side and I'm going to work on the nose area a little bit. So I'm taking the 390 Carbothello Prussian blue, evening up the edge of the nose, and using the 370 Derwent to reshape things by adding a lighter color. I didn't like the shape of the nose. I didn't think I'd gotten it quite accurate. So I'm darkening it, and then I'm going to add the highlights back on the nose. So here's the 450 cyan, and I'm pulling the reflected light hairs back on the nose. And I'm using the 390 Carbothello Prussian blue to darken that area. .450 cyan, working up the side of the face. Taking the 770 Payne's Gray, and I'm going to add some wood grain coming out from under the leaves. kind of sketching in the direction I want it to go in. Using the white Carbothello pencil to add a white shape to the wood grain, a white highlight really to the wood grain over the 770. And I'm going to use another color, Carbothello 105 Ivory, which has a slight yellow tone. And so I'm adding that. Then I'm going to take my 770 and add some wood grain above the ivory and underneath the two leaf shapes that we previously put in. Using Carbothello 105 and Carbothello 100 white, and adding lighter colors to the slog. I'm going to blend that little area of dark between the leaves with my little blender. I'm using the 770 Payne's Gray, adding the wood grain. I'm using the edge of my larger sponge, you could use your small sponge, to blend and pull out the wood grain, and then go back and darken it or add some more with my 770. I'm continuing to draw in the grain with these colors. The Carbothello 770 Payne's Gray, the Carbothello 706 Gray 4, Carbothello 750 Black, Carbothello 390 Prussian Blue, the Carbothello 100 Point White, whatever color I see, and I'm following the pattern of the wood grain. I'm adding a curve. I'm using the 770 to put in some shapes, and I'm using my 750 to darken particular areas of the wood grain as it curves around the log. Now I decided it needed to be brighter blue, so I'm taking the edge of the 5058 Rembrandt Ultramarine Blue and I'm adding deeper blue in this area and finger blending it. So it's maintaining that rustic appearance. And I've got my 770 in my hand and adding more grain to the log. I'm adding lighter tones with a 105 ivory. I'm adding some 100.5 white Rembrandt. And I'm blending with the number 2 Color Shaper pointed tool. It's very useful. You don't have to have it, but if you have one, it works really nice. This is something that just takes patience. It's kind of like when we were doing the fur. So just add the wood grain, and if you need to, take a break and come back and look at it, adding a little more white, and see what you need to do to adjust it. I'll see you in our final part, part 5, as we finish up this log. Thanks for joining me.